There are places on the map that Google Earth doesn't show you. Places tucked away behind no trespassing signs, deep in the backwoods of the Ozarks, or hidden in the basements of suburban homes. We like to think that if we stay on the main road, we're safe, but sometimes we take a wrong turn. Tonight, I have four true stories from people who ventured where they shouldn't have. From a disturbing discovery in an abandoned summer camp to a roadside encounter that will make you never want to drive at night again. Sit back, lock your doors, and let's get into it. My friend Mike and I ran a small urban exploration channel. We weren't big, maybe 15,000 subscribers, but we were dedicated. We lived in Missouri, so we spent a lot of time poking around abandoned barns and factories in the Midwest. Last October, Mike found coordinates for an old summer camp, deep in the Ozark National Forest. It had closed in the late 90s due to funding issues, or so the internet said. We parked Mike's Jeep about 3 miles out because the access road was washed out. It was a long hike. By the time we saw the rotting wooden cabins, the sun was already dipping below the tree line. The camp was eerie. The main mess hall had collapsed and old canoes were rotting by the lake, half buried in mud. Mike was filming, doing his usual history commentary. I was just managing the gear. At first it was quiet, too quiet, but then, as we moved toward the old staff quarters, I noticed something, a distinct smell, not just mold, but wood smoke, faint but fresh. Then I saw the laundry. Strung up between two pine trees was a line of clothes. Not old rot-eaten clothes from the 90s. These were flannel shirts, jeans, and, weirdly, children's-sized t-shirts. They were clean. "Mike," I whispered, pointing it out. He lowered his camera. "Squatters?" he asked. "Maybe," I said. "We should go." 5 more minutes, he insisted. He wanted to check out the amphitheater. It was a concrete pit with wooden benches arranged in a semicircle. We crept toward it. The twilight was turning into dark purple. That's when we heard the sound. It was a rhythmic, mechanical clicking. Click, whir, click, whir. We peeked over the ridge of the amphitheater. My blood ran cold. Sitting on the center stage, on a folding metal chair, was a man. He was huge, wearing dirty coveralls. But it wasn't his size that scared me. It was his head. He was wearing a Mascot helmet, a giant, fuzzy, cartoon rabbit head. The kind you'd see at a theme park or a high school football game. But the fur was matted with brown grime. One ear was torn off, and the mesh eye holes were pitch black. In his lap, he was holding an old NOAA weather radio. He was turning the hand crank. That was the noise. Click, whir. He would crank it for a few seconds, stop, tilt that giant rabbit head to the side like he was listening to something, and then crank it again. Mike, being an idiot, tried to zoom in. His foot slipped on the gravel. Skirt! The sound echoed in the bowl. The cranking stopped instantly. The man didn't stand up. He just slowly turned that oversized, smiling rabbit face toward us. Then a voice came out of the radio, not a weather report, a distorted, pre-recorded voice screaming, "Found you!" Suddenly, floodlights, blindingly bright LED tactical lights, slammed on from the woods behind the stage. There were others. We weren't looking at a lone hermit. We were looking at a performance. We didn't wait to see who was holding the lights. We ran, we sprinted back through the woods, ignoring the trail. Behind us, I could hear heavy boots thudding against the earth, and that high-pitched manic laughter coming from the radio, getting louder and louder. We tore our clothes on briars, fell multiple times, but we didn't stop until we hit the Jeep. We drove out of there going 60 on a dirt road. We never posted the footage. We deleted the channel a month later. I still have nightmares about that smiling rabbit face and the way he just sat there, cranking that radio, waiting for an audience. I work as a property inspector in Oregon, mostly handling foreclosures for banks. It's usually boring work. You document water damage, check the foundation, and leave. Last April, I got a work order for a property near Crater Lake. It was a massive A-frame house, hidden up a long gravel driveway, completely isolated by towering Douglas fir trees. The bank said the previous owner had stopped paying the mortgage 15 years ago, but they only just legally reclaimed the land. I arrived around 2 p.m. The house looked rough on the outside. Moss on the roof, peeling paint, standard stuff. I unlocked the front door and stepped in. Immediately, the hair on my arms stood up. The air wasn't stale. It smelled like bleach and ozone. The living room was furnished, but not with 15-year-old furniture. There was a flat-screen TV, broken, but definitely from this decade. There were takeout containers on the counter, dated from last week. My first thought was, squatters. I shouted, "Property inspection, anyone here?" Silence. I should have left, but I needed the paycheck. I started taking photos quickly. I went upstairs. The master bedroom was normal, but the second bedroom, the door was padlocked from the outside. I had my bolt cutters. I clipped the lock and opened it. The room was empty, except for a single chair facing the window. The window was boarded up, but a small hole, maybe the size of a coin, had been drilled through the wood. I looked through the peephole. It was aimed directly, and I mean perfectly, at the driveway where my car was parked. Whoever lived here sat in this room and watched the driveway. Feeling sick, I went down to the basement to check the water heater and get the hell out. The basement was finished. Concrete walls, soundproofing foam on the ceiling. Along the far wall, there was a desk with a bank of monitors. They were off, except one. I walked over. The screen showed a black and white feed. It was a camera angle looking down at a front porch. I squinted. It looked familiar. Then I saw the car in the feed, a silver Toyota Camry. My car. The camera was hidden somewhere on the front porch of this house. Then, on the screen, I saw something else. A man walked into the frame. He was wearing a dark hoodie. He walked up to my car, cupped his hands against the window, and looked inside. Then he looked up directly into the camera lens. He held up a set of keys. My keys. I patted my pocket. Empty. I must have dropped them on the porch when I was fumbling with the lockbox. The man on the screen turned and walked toward the front door. Upstairs, I heard the front door handle jiggle. Then, the heavy thud of the door opening. He was in the house. I didn't think. I killed my flashlight. The footsteps were heavy, deliberate. Thump, thump, thump. Moving toward the basement door, I looked around frantically. There was a small egress window high up on the wall. I stacked a crate on the desk and clawed at the latch. It was rusted shut. The basement doorknob started to turn. I grabbed a hammer from the workbench and smashed the window latch. The glass shattered. I pulled myself up, scraping my stomach on the broken glass just as the basement door creaked open. I tumbled out onto the wet grass in the backyard and didn't look back. I ran into the tree line. I didn't stop running until I hit the main road, 2 miles away. When the police went back, the house was empty. My car was there, tires slashed. The monitors in the basement were gone. The room with the peephole had been doused in bleach. I've been driving 18-wheelers for 6 years. I do the long haul from El Paso to Jacksonville. There's a stretch of I-10 in West Texas that is just empty. No lights, no towns, just hundreds of miles of desert. It was 3 a.m. I was running on coffee and adrenaline. I needed to use the bathroom. Bad. My GPS showed a rest area about 5 miles ahead. Weirdly, it wasn't marked on my paper atlas, but I was desperate. I saw the exit ramp. It was unlit, just a dark ribbon of asphalt leading away from the highway. I pulled my rig in. The parking lot was cracked and overgrown with weeds. The street lights were all broken, staring down like dead eyes. There was one building, a concrete block restroom with a single, flickering yellow bulb above the door. No other trucks were there, just me. I grabbed my tire thumper, a heavy wooden bat I keep for safety, and walked to the restroom. The inside was filthy, graffiti everywhere. The mirror was smashed. I went into a stall and locked it. About 30 seconds later, I heard the heavy metal door of the restroom creak open. Steps, soft, Shuffling steps, not boots. It sounded like bare feet, slapping on the wet tiles. Slap, slap, slap. I held my breath. I hadn't heard a car pull up. The footsteps stopped right in front of my stall. I saw feet under the gap, dirty, caked in mud, with long yellow toenails. They were facing the door, just standing there. I gripped my bat. Occupied, I said, trying to sound tough. A voice answered. It sounded wet, like the guy had blood in his mouth. You woke them up. What? I asked. The ones under the concrete, you woke them up with your engine. Then, the guy started banging his head against the stall door. Thud. Go. Thud. Go. Thud. The door latch started to bend. I didn't wait. I kicked the door open violently. It hit the guy, knocking him back. I shined my flashlight. It was a man, skinny as a rail, wearing nothing but tattered underwear. His forehead was bleeding profusely, but he wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the floor drain in the center of the room. Black sludge was bubbling up from the drain, and I swear to God, I heard whispering coming from the pipes. I shoved past the man and sprinted to my truck. As I climbed into the behind bay, I looked back. The man was standing in the doorway of the restroom, dreaming at the scum, and behind him, in the shadows of the parking lot, I saw shapes moving, crawling on all fours, low to the ground, moving toward my truck. I slammed the truck into gear and burned rubber getting out of there. I drove 4 hours straight without blinking. When I checked Google Maps the next day, that exit didn't exist. This happened during spring break, my senior year of college. Me, my girlfriend, Sarah, and our buddies Dave and Mark decided to go camping in West Virginia. Dave knew about this old limestone quarry that had filled up with rainwater. He said it was like a private swimming pool carved into the mountain. We had to park Dave's Jeep at a trailhead and hike about an hour through thick brush to get there. The place was paradise, high cliffs, deep blue water, completely silent. We spent the day swimming and drinking beers on the rocks. Around 4 p.m., the vibe changed. We were drying off when Mark noticed something on the cliff opposite us, about 50 yards away. Is that a truck? He asked. I looked. Sitting way up on the ridge, barely visible through the trees, was a white pickup truck. The engine was off. The windows were down. It was just facing us. Probably a Ranger, Sarah said, nervously. Rangers drive green SUVs, I said. We decided to pack up. We felt exposed down there in the bowl of the quarry. We started hiking back up the trail toward the Jeep. We were about halfway up when, zip, something whizzed past my ear and cracked into a tree trunk next to me. I looked at the tree. A crossbow bolt was buried 3 inches deep in the bark, fletched with black feathers. Run, I yelled. We scrambled up the path. Thwip, another bolt hit the dirt right at Sarah's feet. They weren't trying to hit us. They were hurting us. Every time we tried to go toward the main trail, a bolt would fly in front of us, forcing us to turn right into the deep, thorny woods. We were cut up, bleeding, and terrified. We ran for what felt like an hour, totally lost. Eventually, we burst out onto a gravel road. To our left, about 100 yards down, was Dave's Jeep. We started sprinting toward it. Then, the white pickup truck slowly rolled out from a side trail, blocking the road between us and our car. The driver's side door opened. A man stepped out. He was wearing camouflage hunting gear and holding a compound crossbow. He didn't look angry. He looked bored. He raised the bow, aiming it right at us. We froze, hands up. He stood there for a long, agonizing minute, just looking at us through the scope. Then he lowered the bow. He pointed a finger at the main road, away from the Jeep. Walk, he said. His voice was calm. But our car, Dave started. The man raised the bow again. We walked. We walked 6 miles to the nearest gas station. When the sheriff went back to get the Jeep the next day, it was a wreck. All the windows were smashed, the tires were slashed, and the interior had been gutted. But the scariest part? Inside the glove box, they found a note. It read, Next time, you're the deer. Those four groups of people made it out alive. Not everyone is so lucky. The world is older than we think, and there are still dark corners where the rules of civilization don't apply. If you ever find yourself on a lonely road or staring at a fence with a no trespassing sign, do yourself a favor, turn around. Thanks for listening. If you want to stay alive, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the dark.